couple of years ago, we had a very famous Harvard business professor on the show, Clayton Christensen. Clayton, I hope I got your name right. Anyway, he's very famous. He came up with the theory of the innovator's dilemma. It's a concept which has run and run within the business and consulting community. But now, apparently, Christensen was wrong. The innovator's dilemma was a complete mistake. And my guest today, Larry Downs, old friend who actually on the show, in the first TechCrunch TV show actually Larry was on. Larry has just come out with a new book, Big Bang Disruption, which destroys the innovator's dilemma. Larry, always a pleasure to have you on TechCrunch TV.
Likewise, thank you, Andrew.
So Larry, you've been causing more trouble, as always. What's been going on? Why is Christensen wrong?
Well, it wasn't that he was wrong before, he's become wrong. And part of the problem is, as technology continues to get faster and cheaper and smaller and use less energy, the way in which new products and services enter the market has fundamentally changed. So Christensen said the way that innovation happens, the way disruptive innovation happens, is that new products enter the market, they're cheaper, but they're lousy. They're not as good. And so companies that are in the incumbent stage, they don't have to worry about them right away. They can start to experiment later when the products finally kind of work their way up.
So Apple or Google, are they classic Christensen companies?
Yeah, I mean, he talked about companies whose core technologies were not going to change very quickly, but that eventually they were going to be disrupted.
So you've disrupted the disruptor. So what's wrong with the theory? What's a Big Bang disruption all about?
So a Big Bang disruption, this is the problem, is a Big Bang disruption is a new product or service that enters the market better and cheaper than the ones that it's going to compete with. Because technology has gotten so good, when new products come in, they're not lousy anymore. They're better and cheaper, and therefore all the innovators, all the incumbents who are waiting around to see when these technologies will finally get mature enough to worry about, they're waiting too long. When those new products come in, it's too late to respond.
So we know about these technologies in Silicon Valley. What are the classic examples you use in the book?
Well, of course, the classic example is everything having to do with the computer. Thanks to Moore's Law and all the other things that go with it, computers just get faster and cheaper and smaller, really on a predictable stage. But we looked at a lot of other things, optics, the human genome product, nanotechnology, sensors. Lots of other technologies are also experiencing that kind of exponential improvement.
And what does this mean, Larry, for entrepreneurs? Because Big Bang Theory sounds very interesting, but how does this change the challenges for a startup entrepreneur, the kind of people who are watching our show?
Well, it's a great time, I think, first of all, to be a startup entrepreneur. One of the things we found is that because of the cloud, because of reusable software, reusable hardware components, it's much easier now to compete with a big company. You don't need that kind of R&D infrastructure anymore. You can put together your product in a sort of interesting way and launch it directly into the market, very low cost, very low risk. You can use crowdsourcing platforms to get funding from your eventual customers, and you can become a company without really much infrastructure at all.
But isn't the problem with your theory, not the problem with the theory itself, but the problem with this kind of economy, is that just as you destroy the previous incumbent, you are very vulnerable to destruction yourself?
Yes, absolutely. What we say in the book is that the kind of the life cycle, that traditional life cycle of technology adoption has been squashed and stretched to the point where when your product does take off, when you're successful, it's a straight line straight up. You're going to achieve what we call catastrophic success. You're going to get all your customers in a very short amount of time. And that means, one, you've got to be prepared for that kind of success. You have to have the infrastructure available to you. Let's say you lease it or rent it, but you've got to be able to serve those customers when they arrive all at once. And at the same time, you've got to be ready very quickly with the next innovation or to sell out if you're not going to, you're going to do it once and sell.
So does that mean that companies like Google or Apple are ultimately doomed? Are they doing a good job?
Well, it's not clear that incumbents can't abide by these new rules, that they can, in fact, develop Big Bang disruptions of their own. But one of the things that we see a lot, and this is accelerated in recent years, is the most successful tech companies are always on the market for acquiring startups that have just hit that point where they've got a successful product before they really get too big to acquire. These days the going price seems to be $1 billion plus. But we see a lot more of these kinds of acquisitions as a way of fueling the growth and sort of getting fresh blood into these big companies.
So what would your advice be to the guys at Snapchat, for example? Should they sell to Facebook at $3 billion before their market gets disrupted?
Well, so it depends. I mean, if they're thinking that they've got a whole pipeline of new products and services and they've got a mechanism for developing more, they've got sort of a creative mindset, then I would stick it out. On the other hand, if they think, you know, this was our one good idea, it's been a huge success, this is a great time to become now part of a bigger company, then it's time to sell.
Is this pace going to continually accelerate? At what point, Larry, do we hit a wall?
Well, people have been saying, of course, in computing that we were going to hit a wall for now 20, 30 years, almost as soon as Gordon Moore first predicted this exponential growth. People have said it can't last. It has lasted. It looks like it will continue to last, you know, at least through your and my working lifetime. And we have all these other technologies now that are starting to exhibit similar properties.
So it's good news for entrepreneurs.
It's incredibly good news.
And what markets are now ready for this big bang disruption? Education, healthcare?
Education, healthcare, energy, manufacturing, financial services. We really didn't find too many markets that didn't.
Anything?
Well,
restaurants?
You know, restaurants, yes. We have a restaurant example in the book. We talk about how things like Yelp and other kinds of reviews are changing the interface of how people choose and select where they go. In fact, in some ways, they're adding value and also becoming the customer's friend. But one of the things we found was that the industries that are the most regulated, they're going to be the slowest to experience this kind of change. At the same time, when the change happens, think about things like Uber and Sidecar and Lyft and Airbnb. When the change comes, it's going to be that much more dramatic.
Is the sharing economy of Uber and Airbnb, does that change things fundamentally, or is it just another cycle in this big bang disruption?
No, we think that these are the sort of sources of fundamental changes because we've got industries like the ones they're in which have not innovated, which have not had an incentive to innovate for a very long time. So the user interaction, the customer relationship, it's frankly terrible.
So the collaborative economy is for real?
It is for real in some markets already, and in other markets it will be soon, at least in the next couple of years.
Larry, I know what are you, a senior fellow at Accenture?
Yes, a research fellow at Accenture.
How does this economy, big bang disruption, affect guys like you? How does it affect the consulting business?
Well, we of course, you know, we're going to be disrupted as well. Service businesses.
How do we disrupt you? How do I earn your big money, Larry?
I can't give away all my secrets, Andrew.
But are you available to consult with startups? Do startups need consultants like you to explain the broader economy?
Well,
this is your opportunity to sell your services to a huge audience, Larry.
Well, we do work, of course, individually and also my colleagues at Accenture. We work with companies of all sizes. We also work with investors. I think that's a big part of this as well. Their business is being disrupted as well. And that's a big part of how we're trying to, that's how we did the research, and now that's how we're trying to, you know, sort of propagate these ideas through the bigger market.
Final question, Larry. How has Professor Christensen at Harvard University, has he responded to you trashing his argument?
Well, Professor Christensen is, is a very,
lovely guy, by the way.
I was going to say he's a
charming gentleman,
very elegant person and a very gracious person. We have not heard directly from him. We don't really expect to, but I think his ideas have been very, very important, and we built on, frankly, on those ideas. We just think that the time has come for a new way of looking at it and to think about disruption, innovation in a very different way if you want to survive what we call the innovator's nightmare.
Well, speaking of innovators' nightmares, we'll have to have you, Larry, and Professor Christensen on the show at the same time to duke it out. Who's right? Larry Downs, as always, a pleasure, and best of luck with this extremely interesting book, Big Bang Disruption.
Thanks, Andrew.